what your thoughts are right now?
Okay, sure. I'm going to take this off just so I can, everybody can hear me much better. And I'm just going to start off. I want to thank all of you for voicing your concerns. And we did listen. We've obviously, a lot of us have had a lot of conversations with all of you. And I guess too, I want to try to make sure you understand that when we started this process, it wasn't ever an intent that we wanted to harm anybody. We didn't want to create this. That's nothing that we anticipated whatsoever. So I apologize if we jumped ahead of this quicker than we should have. But after hearing all this, and I'm just going to start it all off, and I'm going to cut right to the chase. I'm going to make my recommendation, and I'll leave it to the board to make their comments. And I'd like to separate this off too, so we talk about each property separately. My recommendation is that we no longer continue to pursue putting wood chips on the county home road property, which is just east of Benton. So we would take that completely off the table and no longer plan on putting wood chips there. So I'll open that up to any discussion amongst our group.
Are you making a motion?
Well, I certainly will, yeah. I'll make a motion that we discontinue the efforts to put wood chips on the county home road property.
I, Dan Hill, will second the motion to abandon putting wood chips on the county home road property. Yeah, we need to vote on it then.
Yep.
Unless there's any other further discussion.
None from me.
Okay, all in favor? Say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Okay.
So moving on to the second item would be the Fry property, which is the property near Hammond Lake south of, in the southern part of Benton County. To kind of give you an update, we have talked to, and I'll speak on behalf of our staff, but for the most part, Zach Parmenter has spoken to all but one of the landowners, and that was as of 2 days ago. And that final person, a message was left, but all of those landowners were positive towards the project being there. We've talked through things with, I've talked to a couple of the supervisors to get some of their thoughts on it. Again, having the discussion that we did Monday with the DNR being present, it has been permitted. We have no fear that any of this material is going to be a risk to the environment. We don't fear of any at all of the wood chips leaching into Hammond Lake at all. There is a considerable distance that even if there was anything, there's prairie and other things that would absorb any of the material. Again, and the plan would be that, just as we discussed, this would be 6 foot of depth of material. And in fact, I know Shelby, if you've got pictures that you could share.
There's some copies up there on that table too.
Yeah, so.
And I can pass these around your paper.
So anybody who'd like to see the pictures, in it, you know, as much as we knew up front, but even when you see the pictures of this, it really even gives you a better idea of how finely ground that this material really is. And so when you picture this, and the fact that it's hauled in by the contractor, a bulldozer will compact this and run over it multiple times, and another load's poured, and so it's finally until it reaches its maximum depth of 6 feet. So it's not a situation where there's going to be animals, mice, rodents going into it, because it becomes literally a wood mat, so to speak. And according to the contractor, he estimates that in a year's time, in fact, that will go from 6 feet to 3 to 4 feet, and it breaks down fairly quickly. Again, we feel there's no risk to the property there whatsoever, and again, with the landowner support. I would also like the support of the supervisors, that if you were to allow us to move forward with this, that you would allow us to earmark the monies received specifically for payment of the debt towards the 160 acres that we purchased, which is the property north or just south of Mount Auburn. If there's anything else, we also, and I'm going to give Shelby all this credit about, she has worked with the contractor to work on some additional donations that they will make to local organizations. And I'm going to let Shelby steal her credit because I thank her for doing this.
Yeah, so they are, going to be making, they will be making, donations at, per cubic yard to Pheasants Forever, Whitetails, and Turkey, and it's the local chapters. So it stays in Benton County, and we selected those organizations because we know their money stays in Iowa County. There are plenty of other organizations, I'm sorry. Oh my goodness, my past is sneaking up on me. So because they stay in the county, and then, no, I'm like, don't say Iowa. And other organizations, some of them go to the state, and then you have to request funds from the state, so keeping it home is what we're going for, so.
And I spoke last night to the Blue Creek Springtime Monarchs, which is the NWTF chapter in Benton County. And they are willing to do that, more than likely planting of trees in the Hammond Lake area, which was devastated by the derecho in August. So at least one of the groups is committed for sure. And I know Pheasants Forever, I'm also a member of Pheasants Forever for a long time, that they'll be happy to participate. So not only are we getting funding, but so will two sources that, and then anybody that's in a organization such as the NWTF, Pheasants Forever, or anything, money is really hard to come by right now. So it's a big benefit to these groups as well. That's all kind of, I don't know if there's any questions, discussion from any of our group.
I guess go ahead, sir.
I'm just wondering, when will they start putting the chips in over at Frog Art?
A lot depends on how this meeting outcome is tonight, because the equipment's sitting right now in Benton and they want to move it. So ideally, if we had support and approval, they would move the equipment there as early as tomorrow. And then they would start, as soon as it's ready, they start bringing the chips in. The goal is they want to do this while the ground is frozen, so there's less impact on roads and everything else.
Are they gonna clear Kim's driveway before they put the equipment out?
We can do that, yes, certainly.
Can I interrupt a little bit? I kind of screwed up here. For helping our auditor out, can everybody identify themselves? I mean, I know everybody sitting around the table, of course. You probably don't know me. I'm the supervisor, one of them. But you folks, most of them were at the meeting. I don't think you was Monday.
Yes, it was.
You was?
Yeah.
Everybody's got masks on, so could you please identify yourself?
My name is Doolin.
Kim Doolin.
Ann Clark, we live on 26th Avenue.
Carl Gray,
Carlin Gray.
Bill Clark.
David Thompson.
Please silent.
Okay. That good now?
Yep, I'm good.
Okay.
I'm not
You
gonna-
probably knew them. Myself, I
Yeah.
don't know. You probably don't know me either. Okay, thank you. Continue.
I have a question for the supervisors. At Monday meeting, there was a suggestion made, and I don't know if it was in jest or if it was serious, that if Benton County Conservation went through with this project, that they would make a reduction in our budget in kind of that amount. And I was curious if that is still, or if that was ever the thinking of the supervisors, or will the budget stay within the basic parameters of all the other budgets in the county going forward?
I'm the one that pretty well shot my mouth off on that one.
Okay.
And I was under the impression things were being shoved down our throat, if you will.
Okay.
As a board of supervisors, we like to be open, and committees hopefully, have the feeling they can come to us with requests. I visited with Randy yesterday, and he indicated that approximately ballpark $120,000 to $140,000 may come from this private property. And again, like tonight, it's a request to use that towards debt retirement.
Right.
And leave your budget alone. I told him I would be more inclined to be agreeable with that because it's a horse of a different color.
Okay.
You've got adjacent property owners, with the exception of one that has not responded yet, that are not opposed to it, number one. Number two, the whole attitude is different. We would like to do this with that funding to pay off our debt, rather than we're going to, you know. Yeah, I don't know how it is at your house, but if I walk in and tell my wife that I'm going to do something, yeah, we have a discussion usually.
But if it's reversed, it's a different though.
So, yes, that's kind of the gist of it.
So the supervisors are basically, with the new proposal, all right with what's going on, and we'll leave the budget. And I know nobody can predict in the future what's gonna happen, but essentially leave the budget where it's at. You know, I know you can't guarantee that, but not basically penalize us because of this.
In my mind's eye, and I'm one of three,
I understand that.
okay, I don't have a problem with Randy's proposal.
Okay. All right.
How about Gary or Tracy?
I don't either, as long as it's used for debt reduction on paying for that farm, no problem here. And as long, the other thing is that, you probably read this on that property there, you'll have to look back on some of the paperwork on that fry farm to make sure there is nothing, you know,
The
counted.
deed is county conservation on the fry.
That one
You
But
actually
there's-
own that,
is.
right?
You actually, they do actually.
Shelby?
That is ours.
Okay,
There were no restrictions on it?
Correct. Because that one was strictly ours.
Let me hand that over to David.
Oh, he has.
Oh, yeah, I
he-
got it.
Yeah,
So are we gonna put that in the land acquisition for land then?
yes,
Okay,
yeah, so that's the vote we need.
Yep. Cause I need to put that in there. The amount and stuff too.
Yes, which, okay, I think in the vote, it would be up to
Okay.
this amount, because the problem is that since we're now taking out of property, since we're now taking out a section that is significantly closer to the Hall site, we will get docked and we're not gonna get quite as much per cubic yard. So we're not going to be bringing in half anymore, but I don't have a number yet. I was hoping that they would be here today, but they're of course running frantic trying to get those dump trucks elsewhere right now, so, but it will be less than half, unfortunately, but.
half of what they suggested at first, right?
Yes, well, yes, because the 240 was for both properties.
Right,
And so,
that's the high end though.
no, that's
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 guaranteed?
what, well, guaranteed as long as they get to 6 foot. That was the 150 cubic yards that they tended to get out of both properties. So yes, 240 was the appropriate number. It would have been right around that. It will be less than half of that. I'm trying to get in, or is the door just
No, it's
open?
it's the photo eye.
Oh,
Gary's too close to the photo eye. Good moving, Gary.
You didn't hear that.
so I mean, I would say to be safe, let's say up to half. But I don't know, I don't think we'll get quite to that much. So I don't want that
Just
to
open
not
the
be
door
a
a little
either.
bit.
You know, so.
No, now it's locked. Give it a minute.
So is the board okay with putting that 120 in the land for land acquisition?
For debt retirement,
Well, we have to give it spending authority,
correct.
Yeah.
and then I'll show the revenue coming in as well.
I think you've got,
Because I didn't
you've
have
heard out
anything
of
in the
two of
land.
the three of us, obviously, so, you know, that's a majority.
But what year are you gonna do it? You're not gonna amend the budget this year.
No, I'm still working on that, you guys are still doing it for fiscal year 22, right?
Well,
Because
no,
she doesn't have spending authority for this year, so we'll have to amend it just for this.
Well, it'll be
It
for
can get
this.
deposited this year though, correct?
Yes,
Okay, so I can talk to Heritage Foundation and have them write me the invoice on July 1.
That's fine.
That's, I mean, if that's just easier, we can do that. I'll
Yeah,
talk.
because, yeah, there's definitely not spending authority.
Yeah, I know, we're zeroed out,
Yeah,
so.
you and I talked about that.
Understood.
If I may, I realize that situations change, that yes, the committee supposedly had funding in place. Some of that can go south, especially the way the economy has been lately. And so I really appreciate, the fact that you've looked at other alternatives to bring in source of income to try to save the taxpayers of Benton County some money to retire this debt. That all makes sense.
So, does anybody have any other questions? Yes, Dave.
David Thompson, County Attorney. Not so much a question per se, but Randy and I had a nice long conversation earlier today. And Randy, for the benefit of the record that you established here, if you could maybe state briefly what is the conservation purpose that will be served by doing this? And a couple of those things like that we talked about, that is good to kind of cover your bases. And then the second part would be a question. And I apologize, I should have asked you this earlier. Does this outfit that will be doing this, do they have a proposed contract? That I haven't had a chance to see. And then the other thing I'd like to say is, I understand, you guys have been working on this for a while, but from the county's perspective, Mark Greenlee is here, and I know Mark has done quite a bit of checking into it too. And I've had a chance to talk with Mark a couple of times today. I think in theory, it sounds like if folks are not objecting in the neighborhood to it, in theory, it sounds like it could be a very good thing. But again, if you could just for the purpose of when you guys take an action, it's got to be serving a governmental purpose, and in your case, a governmental purpose that benefits conservation in Benton County, and not just financially. You know what I mean?
Correct. Yeah. So the current the 7 acres that we're proposing with the Fried property is currently public use. It's part of the Hannon Lake area. And how many acres is Hannon Lake?
218 total.
218 total acres. So we're looking at 7 acres of the 218. Fry area and Hannon is not public hunting, so we're not removing any public hunting from this whatsoever. Now somebody can walk through there, but to be honest, the area that we're looking at is the high ground that, the last of my knowledge, was an invasive issue, and it's predominantly grass, so it's kind of been a work in progress that we've been trying to address and get ahead of. So it's not an area that we're really taking away from public use per se. People will still be able to walk through, and really probably within a short time they can even walk across the mulch itself. And if we need to taper it, we can have them taper it as they indicated in our meeting on Monday. So we're really not impacting the area at all. In somewhere in the next 5 to 10 years, we anticipate that will break down significantly and create a pretty healthy organic soil. And so whether we decide to just keep it in that area and spread it, or it may be a product that we'd be actually able to move to other county properties if we need. So there will be a positive gain that we'll have from that soil. So that's really kind of how we see it with this. And again, our part of our concern also has to be an environmental concern, because we don't want anything to happen. We're doing a lot of work with Hannon, but the DNR just has been there to permit the property. They've looked it over, and there's no indication whatsoever that there's any issue for erosion or anything of that reaching down to the lake. So from our standpoint, we believe that it's a safe thing to do. It's storing natural materials. There's, and the questions were raised on Monday, is there anything bad in the material? The contractor was very clear and said, no, we can't guarantee that. But he did talk about the process that they go through, the screening. Every single load has to be photographed when it's exiting the premises. So everything they do is trying to make sure it's as clean a material as possible. And again, as he indicated, they've logged out the trees themselves, and they've done separately with those. This is mainly the branches and the smaller pieces of the trees that they're working with. So that's what helps compact that so much. which again helps it break down. And even I know there's been a fire concern, but if you picture again, and that's where those pictures really help, when you see what having that compacted so firmly is going to do, there's really not going to be much of a chance that there's going to be a spark that's going to create it, because it's not going to be dry wood like you would picture, even if it was a brush pile that's in a timber. So, yes.
Randy, I'm Wayne Silent. What's the magic to the 6-7 acres in both sites? Originally, is there another 6-7 acres down at this fry farm that you could put the rest of the stuff on?
No, there's not.
Unfortunately not.
What's their criteria for, it's gotta be in top of the hill, or what's?
It's got to be, excuse me, it's got to be high ground, so it can't be in a floodplain where, and so that's where a majority of our county properties are river parks. And so really the only two places that met the criteria of FEMA and the contractor are the two locations that we identified.
Randy, maybe you guys covered this in your Monday meeting, but what's their time frame? Once they get started, when are they done?
About a month to a month and a half. Is that, am I remembering? Yeah.
But that was for both properties, wasn't it?
No, I don't think
I
so.
think that was one for one location.
Yeah, but, and of course, they might end up having to continue it next winter too, depending on time frame, but yes, it's about a month and a half.
Is it conceivable that the product can be used by conservation? As in they're bringing mulch to you, you can use that product within your park?
Not currently how it is, but eventually, once it starts to break down.
We've tried to, think of it more as an unprocessed soil. It's not really a landscaping material by any means, but our intention is to let it break down into its organic matter into a soil.
So, yeah, soil or soil amendment, basically?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and they described it as pieces that are up to 12 inches, maybe 18 at the most, and the screener is at most allows 6-inch pieces in diameter through it. So it's a little bit larger than what you have in a normal bag of mulch.
I see.
Yeah. And I think the one,
Did you see the pictures?
there's a couple of pictures that have it, the measuring tape.
Yeah, I thought that's fine, I got it.
Yeah, I think he said that.
She was already up and at it, so.
Thanks.
I think that's
Thank you. I missed it.
Well, yeah, they found the biggest piece in the pile to show an example, yeah.
I have a question. Shelby, when does the contractor want to start with this? I know they were ready to go.
They were.
Are they ready to go on Fry? And
They were actually asking if they could move the dozer to Fry after Monday's meeting, and I just told them not to touch anything until they're new.
okay,
So they're anxious to get at it. Of course, I'm not sure logistically for trucks where they're at because they had to push us back, but it sounds like they're ready to start Fry as soon as possible.
right, and we do have a signed contract. Has that been forwarded to the county attorney's office then?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
No, it's
They're
two
separate.
separate pages, so we would just get rid of the first page.
Have you looked at it, Dave?
Well, I'm checking my email right now because,
I believe
is
it's,
that your email from Sunday?
yes. I believe it's on there.
Give me a second.
Shelby, I got a question.
Absolutely.
Who's responsible for that big rock that was put in the driveway? Who's gonna eat that bill? Out here by the dog pound.
Big rock put in the driveway.
When they widen the driveway.
Oh,
Oh,
sure.
You know what I mean?
Are you talking county home, the
Yeah,
actual
out
property itself?
East of town here, somebody dumped a load of big rock on the driveway where the cat bulldozer was.
Oh, okay. It is my understanding that the company and Myron worked that out.
Okay.
Because I told them I'm not gonna be middleman between the two of you as long as you guys have that understanding. And they both agreed that that was fine, and they started calling each other.
Okay.
So Myron and the company were talking directly.
Okay.
I would assume that they would move it.
Excuse me, my name's Bill Clark, who's Myron?
Myron
County
Creek is
Our county engineer.
Okay. But still, who's footing the bill for the driveway?
They are, the company did it.
Okay.
That's all the company, yeah.
Okay.
That's part of the process. Did you find it, Dave? I have it pulled
Yeah,
up.
no,
Okay.
I'm looking at it, I guess I would say this,
It's super simple.
it is super simple, it hasn't been signed yet, because you haven't been approved yet. I would recommend that they put a clause in there that says when the payment will be made.
Yes, that's what Becky said, and
I mean, it's good to have a contract, it looks fine, but, you know, that's kind of important.
yes, and it's a 45-day payment period, just
So-
so we're all clear, it's just not in the contract.
You know,
but-
so, and you can handwrite that in, if
Yep.
that needs to be addressed, but other than that,
And actually, I was adding the donations in there by hand too.
yep, that needs to be added as well.
So you're gonna sit down in his office and get this the way he
And if
wants
he
it?
wants to, or
Yeah, I was gonna say, I can,
we can do it tonight, or whatever.
yeah, all I was gonna do was add the payment for what we said, and we get paid in a 45-day scale, and then, the donations stated. I have it all in writing from him, it's just not on this quick subcontract that was wrote up.
Not my place to tell you anything, but I would sit in his office
Yeah.
and you go through it. So it's-
Who's your primary contact in this company?
I'm talking to two people, Justin, the one that's on here, Justin Holland.
Okay.
And then Chris Hagan. Chris Hagan's the logistics for the truck.
If you want to, and again, would they be starting maybe tomorrow then, if
If it's okay, yeah.
If they wanna email
I mean-
something and you forward it to me, come up with something, and just email it, and if you let me know, I'll check my email.
Okay.
At home, whatever.
And I mean, as in, they'd have to get the dump truck there and cut the site yet.
No, I
So it's
understand.
it's not like they'll start hauling
There
tomorrow.
should be something specified as to when payments are made.
Yep.
And again, maybe you said this and I didn't quite hear it, did they say when? Payments would be made periodically?
In a 45-day cycle.
So they make payments every 45 days?
Yes, because that's for the
After
FEMA.
commencement of depositing
Yes.
materials?
Yes,
So
so
some-
they,
some- Something that says that.
Yeah.
And then, you know, it's nice if they're gonna make a donation to the two aforementioned groups. You know, maybe something that specifies how those donations will be made and what the, I'm sure it's based on the tonnage or whatever that gets deposited.
correct.
You know, just something that clarifies that.
Yeah.
Other than that, it's fine.
I
You
guess
can call me on that if there's any questions.
Okay. I've got your number.
I'm glad to hear that, they're not gonna haul whenever the frost is going out, because 2 years ago, there was a hole in that road that goes, that's gravel, 2 miles west of Blairstown to the county line. And it was so bad that, I went one day, and they had put 3 loads of rock in it, and it was worse than it was the day before. So if they're gonna haul it, they need to haul that stuff whenever the roads are froze. So it's important, either that or they're gonna have to go around on the blacktop past the landfill and then past the lake, in my opinion.
And he did talk about that specifically on Monday, stating that they're very aware of frost and things coming out of the ground, that it's their goal the same, as they don't want to damage the roads any worse than they have to, so.
I do not think there's much frost in the field.
Yeah.
I would say less than 6 inches.
Which is why they need to get that base layer on if they're gonna haul for a little bit.
There's no other comments, questions? I'm gonna make a motion that we move forward with, the storage of wood chips on the Fry property, near Hannon Lake.
I'll second that. Mike LaGrange seconds it.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes.
I guess that's all we got today then, tonight. So I have a motion. You got anything?
You wanna make a motion on that land or not?
Putting the,
Putting the
Yeah,
sanitary
putting
in?
the money for the
Do
budget.
you wanna do that now, or you wanna wait
Let's do it
till?
now, cause I really gotta get stuff
Okay,
put together.
So you want a formal motion that the funding from the
Yep.
chips,
will go
Because
to,
that'll change what
offset.
she originally presented to you.
Yes.
okay, we'll go down to pay debt.
Yes.
Debt of the land, the Hart property.
Okay.
How's that sound?
Perfect.
Specify it.
so moved and seconded.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Now you need a motion to adjourn the supervisors
Yes,
meeting?
I,
A motion to adjourn. I'll make a motion to adjourn the Benton County Conservation Board meeting.
I'll second that.
I made the motion.
okay, sorry, second.